a lot of us in the South have grown up, on the dividing line of Alabama and Georgia, and so this one is like it's a really big deal for a lot of us. The SEC championship game this Saturday. We will be there as you see the Renaissance Tour. I see it flashing on the laptop right in front of me. We will be on hand in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I miss the Georgia Dome, but I'm not going to wax poetic about the Georgia Dome tonight. Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the location. 4 o'clock Eastern time is the kickoff. Georgia, about a 6.5 point favorite, regardless of where you look right now. Well, what do we think is going to happen here? Let's dive in. There are several major dynamic shifts in play in this game that we haven't seen present the last couple of times these teams have played. And the first one is there is no run game for Alabama to lean on. Now, Georgia has limited Alabama's run a time or two, but Bama had a run game. Bama doesn't have a run game right now. It would surprise me if Bama put up 65, 70 yards rushing. That would surprise me. And it would probably coincide with Bryce Young having broken a 40-yard run. So like one long run and then a bunch of 2-yard gains. They just can't run the ball. Brian Robinson is unlikely to play here. If he plays, certainly not going to be anywhere full speed. And they're just in a bad situation. Alabama's in a bad situation. So that's the first thing that you normally don't find yourself saying. The second thing is there's a decided physical advantage for Georgia here. Georgia's one of the oldest teams they'll ever have. Bama's one of the youngest teams they'll ever have. Bama has not had that line of scrimmage edge, especially offensively, that they're used to having. It's such an opportune moment for Georgia in so many areas. Also consider this. You want me to tell you how big a physical advantage Georgia has and how important the defense for Georgia is. How many times have you ever seen a program like Bama that recruits at a top 3 level annually who has the head coaching edge and the quarterback edge on a neutral field and is still nearly a touchdown underdog? You say that out loud, that's almost enough for some people in the betting community to autoplay the underdog. If I tell some folks you're going to have a head coaching and quarterback edge and you're going to be given points, that's enough for some people to blindly bet Alabama, who is the underdog in this case. So look, here's where people are wrong. There's a lot of intangibles in play here. Here's where people I think are dead wrong. A lot of people are looking at Georgia because they got that undefeated record and they got that number 1 ranking. And people are looking and saying, oh, I guess Georgia's the hunted now instead of the hunter. No, they're not. No, not in this game, they're not. Until they've taken down that dragon, they are the hunter. You make no mistake about it. Now, Bama can view themselves however they want to. Georgia, the mentality around that program, the way they've practiced leading up to this thing, the attitude they'll have when they roll into Atlanta, Georgia Saturday, I can promise you, it will not be looking over their shoulder. It will not be that of the hunted. Georgia football, when it comes to Alabama, very much the hunter still. I would be shocked if Georgia didn't show up as aggressive as you've seen them. I'd be shocked if they didn't show up as prepared as you've seen them. So now let's dive into the game. Because to me, this becomes the whole quicksand versus quick strike thing. Given the limitations that we expect Alabama to have in the run game, and given how suffocating Georgia can be with the complementary style they play. See, that defense feeds into that run game and how it wears on you for 4 quarters. You've got the quick strike ability, which Bama has to have, and you got the quicksand. You got the popcorn droppers, and then you got the Cobra effect over here. Which one is going to win out? Because I think I was texting with Jake Rowe earlier this week. I told him, I'll tell you publicly, I think the logo of Alabama has affected this point spread. I think if you switch jerseys on these teams, the line would be double digits. There's a lot to be said about the prestige and the reputation of that Crimson Script A, and that's why that thing's still under 7. Because if you were to look at the actual state of these rosters and state of these teams this year, and you were to look at that number and you were to just have generic jerseys on each one, you didn't know it was Alabama, I'd say that thing's 10, 11 points. Having said that, there's a path for Alabama. And that's kind of the way I wanted to break it down, like I told you the other night. What's the path here? Here's 2 problems. One of them I already told you for Alabama. They can't run the ball. Number 2, they don't really have the threat of the run. This is where it's different than years past. Years past, Georgia may have stood up against the run, but they had to commit extra effort to do it, and now they don't. It's not just that Bama's not going to be able to run the ball. It's that they're not going to be able to run the ball, and Georgia's probably not going to have to commit numbers to stopping them from running the ball. That makes it a whole heck of a lot harder to consistently make plays through the air the way Bama's going to need to, especially when you don't have 3 or 4 first-round draft picks out there. You got 1 and then some complementary pieces that work off that. The second thing that you don't normally find yourself saying about Bama ever much less in these big games, is they're going to have to change something about who they are. Normally, they're the team making you change who you are. But Georgia's better than them this year. So Georgia's the one that's going to force Bama to change something about who they are. I'm a believer it's got to be injecting more tempo into the passing game, but just into the offense in general. Because when you watch them, to bust tendencies Saturday. I mean, self scouting is going to be so critically important here because they're not even shy about it at Georgia in letting you know we've been getting ready for this one for quite a while. So if you stick to your tendencies, you're already dead. What you got to do is you got to have them in the post-game press conference saying a lot of the same things Nick Saban said. Nick Saban, I've heard him half a dozen times this year say, well, they gave us something that we didn't prepare for. Well, how about you give somebody else something they didn't prepare for? And so that's what Alabama's got to do. Not out of choice, out of necessity. I would think it has a lot more to do with tempo. And I would think also with some of the softer coverage that Georgia's willing to play, I would think it has to do with a lot of screen and underneath passing stuff. And give guys like Jamison Williams the ability to rack up some yards after catch. John Mechie's the same way. I'd be very surprised if some of these young receivers like Ja'Cory Brooks didn't have to play a pivotal role in this game this Saturday. Georgia, like I said, will be as prepared for this game as any game you've seen. So your game plan, your typical game plan, the one that narrowly got you past Florida, the one that got you beat at A&M, the one that narrowly got you past Auburn, you might as well leave that in Tuscaloosa. Something has got to be different here. The things you cannot quantify, though, are what will determine this game. So I'm very interested on Georgia on first down. I'm very interested on Bama on third down. Like there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about as the week goes on, but the non-quantifiable factors here I actually think may go a long way in determining this game. The first one is what I would call, I guess, battered versus battle tested. And I don't even think Nick Saban knows what to expect in this department. You could make the argument that Georgia, having cruised while Bama's had to fight for their life against Arkansas and then Auburn, and now they go to a conference championship game, well, they've already been in the playoff for like 3 weeks. You could make that argument. I could also make the counter argument Bama's beat to death because of it. And so I don't know. That's the whole point of being non-quantifiable. I don't know how to assignate a number on that. Another thing is you can make the argument to me, since Georgia hasn't been pressed all that much, it could be that they've got a lot they're capable of doing they've never had to show you this year. I halfway believe that. How do I quantify it? I don't know. What does it mean for Alabama to be an underdog in a game? What does it mean for them to be in do or die, no safety net, wounded animal mode? I don't know what that means. I never see them. Last time I saw them, they beat Georgia 38-10 when they were in that mode. I don't think that game in 2015 has anything to do with this game, but I don't know what to expect from Alabama in that spot. Also, the pressure factor on Georgia. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't expect this to be an issue, but it doesn't mean it's not real. There is immense pressure on Georgia here, immense pressure. I almost equate this to the way Bama felt opposed to Florida in 08-09. 08, Kirby was actually at Alabama, 08-09, and it's Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer in Florida, and everyone knew you had to get over that hump in order to own the SEC. Bama went up against it in 2008. They bumped their head against the brick wall. They fell down. They got themselves up. They went back. In 2009, they ran through the wall. Well, I'm looking at this the same way, and I'm looking at Georgia having run into that wall a few times and fallen back down. This is the time. They have never had a better opportunity. They will never have a better matchup edge over Alabama than they do right now. That's a lot of pressure. It's also, kind of psychologically a weird thing to know that you can afford to lose Saturday and still go to the playoff. I don't think those things are going to be an issue because I think this Georgia team is far too veteran and mature to allow it to impact them. But it is there. So, I've been wrong on that a time or two. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. Let's take a look at what Vegas thinks, and I'll tell you what I think. The Vegas number on this game right now, according to Caesars, is Georgia minus 6.5. The model is north of there. The model is at Georgia minus 8.5. I've watched these teams. I could make you an argument for Bama, but I have watched Bama a few times this year prove me wrong when I thought they were about to kick it into a different gear. And so I'm done betting on that happening. Georgia's been consistent. They have basically, you listen to Nick Saban earlier this week at his presser, he's told you they have basically been this year what Bama is most years. I'm not betting against that. If I'm going to be proven wrong in this game, I'm going to make Bama do something they haven't done all year. What I'm not going to do is be proven wrong by Georgia doing what they have done the entire year. I'm going to take Georgia to win. I think Georgia's going to cover. I think that this obviously is the biggest win to date for Kirby Smart. It's even bigger than having won a playoff game in years past. If he beats Nick Saban in Alabama Saturday, Make no mistake. That's the biggest win of Kirby Smart's career. I think we're going to see it. But if we don't, boy, it makes that playoff picture really muddy.